Welcome everyone to the next NAPSA webinar. This webinar is being recorded and it is open to anyone, not just NAPSA members. And this evening we have the great pleasure, as he's always absolutely brilliant, to welcome Peter Habert, Director of Policy and Communications for the Property Ombudsman, to be with us this evening and to provide us with a presentation. Now, NAPSA have been working with the TPO for, in fact, we were talking just before we started recording, approaching 6 years now. I can't believe that. Peter was heavily involved in the code of practice that our NAPSA members now follow and how we actually operate. So, hi, Peter. It's great to have you on board, and over to you for your presentation.
Thank you, Tina. And good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your evening. I won't keep you until past 8 o'clock. I understand there's some very important League Cup games going on tonight that some people might want to watch and whatever. Obviously not you, Tina. I can tell by the expression there. But I think what I've got for you tonight is about 25 minutes of presentation. But then I just want to open the floor up and have a good Q&A, because I think last time we did this, there were some really interesting questions. So what I'm going to cover today, if I can get my slides to work, which thing is like, there we go, is I'm going to cover some headline stats from the Ombudsman from last year. I'm going to give you an update on what's been happening this year internally, because there's been some substantial change. Also, we're seeing a lot of change out there in terms of legislation. We know the renters' rights is going to become an act reasonably soon. We know there's going to be legislation in the leasehold space. And there may be something coming up, certainly in the sales space. So we're going to cover a little bit of that off. Then I'm going to come back, give you a quick tour of our new website, take you to a few places there, and talk a little bit about what we're planning in terms of a member portal going forwards. We're also going to talk a little bit about our focus on early resolution and how we've changed some of our internal processes and what it means for you guys should you have the misfortune to have a case referred to us. And that will then feed into our approach to investigations, which we've changed a bit, certainly since last year. And then we'll finish off with a property sourcing case study, because everybody likes a case study where something has gone a bit wrong, basically. And then hopefully at the end, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A, and I'm happy to attempt to answer any question that you may have on that. So if I just move over and talk a little bit about what we saw last year, you can see there's some pretty big numbers on the screen there. I think really what that's telling me, and certainly having done our annual report for many years, is that the demand for our service is increasing year by year by year. You can see we had 73,000 contacts, nearly 6,000 disputes investigated, so on and so forth there. Perhaps the message for you guys, though, is actually property sourcing complaints are tiny compared to those figures there. So in comparison, we have 525 property sourcing members. In 2024, we only received 36 front-end inquiries, and we only actually accepted, I think it was 3 complaints, I think it was last year. And all of those were not NAPSA members. So this demand is getting higher and higher, and looking forward, certainly in terms of renters' rights and what we can expect with the new landlord ombudsman coming on board, we expect these numbers to start going up even further. That landlord ombudsman will be a key turning point, because we know that there is significant pent-up demand from tenants for a new landlord ombudsman. And we also know that tenancy agents and landlords is one and the same thing. So our key focus really going forwards for the best part of the rest of this year is actually working quite closely with the ministry to try and help them design a landlord ombudsman that's actually going to work, because that front door will see complaints which are against agents, which are against landlords, which are all mixed in together. The triage process on the front end is going to be absolutely essential to make sure the complaint goes to the right organisation. And indeed, those processes between the new ombudsman and ourselves, we're going to need to align those so everything actually works. So it's going to be a big challenge, this bit of legislation is going forwards. So that's sort of that's what we're looking at sort of next year. Just coming back to this year, we've had a few changes at TPO. The headline is indeed change, both internally and externally. We've got a new ombudsman. Our ombudsman, Rebecca, retired in January, and Leslie Horton, who was the deputy ombudsman, has now been appointed as the permanent property ombudsman. Leslie's got lots of experience here. She had regulatory roles with the Solicitors Regulation Authority. She had a compliance role with the FTSE 100 company. She also sits on the Bar Standards Board, and also sat on the Ethics and Integrity Panel of the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner for Cumbria. So she's well versed in all of these things, and may well have seen she's getting out and about quite a lot now. What we've also had is a new CEO, Andy Clackers. That's how you pronounce it. He is Scottish. There's no two ways about that. I've mispronounced it so many times, and he's told me off so many times. But Andy spent 17 years in various leadership roles in financial services. So he's worked for both AXA and Standard Life, and was mainly based in Asia for a good part of his working life. He decided to have a career break and come back to Scotland and take it easy for a bit. Turns out he couldn't. He ended up being a regional manager for Belvoir, which then led him to us. But we're very happy to have him on board because, he's been quite significant in some of the changes I'm going to go through in a minute. We've also got a new chair of our board, Claire Bassett. Now, Claire Bassett comes with a very impressive CV. I could read you out some of these things. She serves on the Chartered Insurance Institute as a non-executive director. She's also a non-executive director of the Serious Fraud Office. She's also a non-executive director of the Solicitors Regulation Authority and at the Law Commission. So she's quite busy. I mean, previously, she was a Deputy Director General of the Independent Office for Police Conduct. She was a Chief Executive of the Shadow Trade Remedies Authority, whatever that is. I don't really know what that is. But interestingly enough, she was the Chief Executive of the Electoral Commission during the time of Brexit. What a job that must have been. So Claire comes with a whole wealth of experience. There's no two ways about that. Now, I'm going to skip over the point about significant legislative change. You should think I should be able to say that by now, but I can't. It's always a mouthful, that word. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But the other things we've certainly been focusing on this year is a new website, which I'll show you in a moment, which was certainly a labour of love for about 3 months. That comes with updated complaint and registration forms. And also we have started the process now of designing a new member portal, which is going to be quite exciting, I think. So moving on, legislative change. Renters' rights, leasehold, and indeed probably some stuff in the sales sector is all going to happen. I think, and when I was thinking about this ahead of the presentation, it's quite straightforward. Renters' rights is for, say, letting agents, but for property sourcing agents who are a bit more on the peripheral side, it's going to impact you guys, but it's going to be somewhat of an indirect impact. Now, I'm not going to steal Sean Hooker's thunder, who is presenting on renters' rights next week, so please do tune into that. But certainly when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, well, bringing in a decent home standard, there's going to be a landlord portal. We're going to have to register all your compliance stuff on there. Rent can only be increased once a year. The process of evicting a tenant is going to take much, much longer, and so on and so forth. And what all of that is suggesting to me is that actually there's more risks surrounding this, especially for uncompliant properties. Lenders, as we see here, they might see a higher risk in fixed-term tenancies. But also, I think when you look at all of these things and you think, my God, there's a lot of compliance to get through, I also see an opportunity in it. I think there's very much an opportunity here, certainly for property sourcing agents, to look at something which is compliance ready. Now, it may be that investors start thinking, oh my word, these older properties, we've got to get these to a decent home standards. They're going to have issues with X, Y, and Z. Maybe new builds are a lot better. Maybe that's going to be the way forwards to do these things. I don't know. And the thing is, none of us will really know until this legislation starts making an impact and the market reacts to it. and how the market reacts to it, there will no doubt be opportunities. But certainly thinking about it now and looking forwards, I think certainly for you guys, there is an opportunity, and I'll come on to this, I think, on the next slide, to do things and to do things in a way which massively helps. So what we're talking about here is about good due diligence. I think that's the key, asking the right questions at the right time to the right people to get the right information. So you've got that. So when you're marketing the deal, you can talk about there's a tenant inside, there's a tenant there, they've been paying the rent well. No, they haven't been paying the rent well. The EPC is saying it's this grade. It might need some improvement to get it up to the decent home standards. We know that the rent in the market rent in the area is X. This rent is slightly below it or whatever. There's an opportunity to do all of that. So again, I think all of these things may well create an opportunity for you guys to perhaps market things in terms of fully compliant, low regulatory risk, that sort of thing. But to do that, I go back to what I said a bit earlier, due diligence is absolutely the key. Asking those right questions and getting that material information is going to set you apart from all the others who are not going to bother with it. There's no two ways about that. So that's certainly my take on what I think is going to happen. I suspect Sean will have views on this as well. But at this moment in time, I'll be honest, we're all guessing. We're all guessing to how this legislation is going to land and how the market's going to react to it. So it's going to be interesting times. Let's just say that. So I'm going to leave legislation there for the moment, and I'm happy to come back to it Q&As. I'm going to talk a little bit about our focus on early resolution, which has very much changed since last year. So what we found last year is some of our processes meant that actually complaints were going the whole distance with us. They were ending up in full investigations, there were full files being recorded, and because of that, things were taking quite a long time. So actually, we thought, if we had a blank piece of paper, how are we going to do this? How can we do this better? And actually, we said, let's try and resolve cases through some sort of negotiated settlement, some early resolution process. So we put that in place earlier this year. And what it basically means now is that complainants are given a reasonable assessment of their situation as soon as it comes through the door. So what that basically means is as soon as we assess it, we can tell them if it's got a reasonable chance of success or not. And if it hasn't, we will discontinue our investigation. We will obviously give them advice and guidance behind the scenes about where they can go and get help and all of those sorts of things. But we do that quite early on. And what that means is for them, and indeed for all the agents, we're not wasting anybody's time. If we do think there's something in it, then we will go down this informal process where we will basically talk to both the parties, review their positions, and just see if we can meet somewhere in between where everyone's going to be happy. What it basically means is that if you know something's gone wrong and you know you could have done something better, if you have made a goodwill offer and the consumer hasn't accepted it, you can come to us and we will actually assess that goodwill offer to see if we think it's reasonable. And if we do, we'll tell the consumer, you're not going to get any more coming through TPO in this way. So we can certainly assess it very, very early on. And as I say, if we end up discontinuing the investigation, we will give them signposting and all of those sorts of things. Now, what that's meant, and we've been doing this since the start of the year, is whereas last year we had about 40% of our cases resolved by early resolution, it's now just shy of 80% of our cases. So we've almost doubled what we've done on early resolution. Now, that's made the whole thing a lot quicker. What it's also done is it's shown that both the businesses and the consumers really appreciate that. They appreciate the fact that A, it's an informal process, and B, it's a lot quicker. And what it does is actually, it allows both parties to actually move forward. And often, certainly in landlord, tenant and agent disputes, there's ongoing relationships here. And actually resolving it in an informal manner like this actually helps that relationship to carry on. So we're seeing some very positive impact of doing this. What we can't do in this process, or indeed our investigation process, is to make legal decisions. So when there's accusations of, for example, professional negligence or things like that, that is all for the courts. And again, we will give advice if that is the case, basically. So that's what we're doing on early resolution. Now, combined with what we've done on our investigations, what it basically means is, from a purely numbers point of view, we're actually resolving 20% more complaints than we're getting in through the front door on a monthly basis. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, etc., there'll be a place in time where we will actually start dealing with cases in real time, which will be a massive change for us. So just going back to our investigations, if we can't resolve something through early resolution, it will then go to an adjudicator to look at and conduct an investigation. Now, what we used to do before is write to the agent and say, please, can you provide your entire file? That took time. There's no two ways about that. So we thought about this, thought, actually, let's look at what we got. Is there enough information and evidence here for actually us to make a decision right here, right now? And actually, if that ticks the box, we will. We don't need to ask for any more information whatsoever. But if we do, then we actually ask for targeted evidence. It's specific evidence we'll be requesting. And again, the feedback from businesses has been overwhelmingly positive, because they haven't had to send us a complete file and all of those things. And as I say, what these two things have resulted in is that, it's roughly around 20% more cases we're resolving than we're getting in, which is great, especially when we look forwards to next year and the demand we're going to expect to see on our services with the impact of the Landlord Ombudsman coming in. We expect there to be lots of communication around the new Landlord Ombudsman, which means lots of people Googling Ombudsman, which means lots of people finding us, as well as the Landlord Ombudsman. So the fact that we are getting ourselves into a good place means we're going to be able to cope with that when it actually happens. So I think it's really, really important that, we got these bits of process changes done, especially given what's happening in the future. So that's all about us and what we've done via the website, which I'll come back to. I'm going to move on to a case study, because we always like a case study. So this was obviously one of the 3 that we got in last year. Non-NAPSA member, I'll just repeat for those who weren't listening a bit earlier. I'll let you read it all yourself. I'm not going to read out a slide to you because that's boring and plenty of presenters do that. But I think this one is quite interesting because of the advice that the complainant was given. And certainly looking at it, there's a lot we don't know about this case, but our assumptions is that the way this was marketed was that the option of letting the property as social housing obviously attracted a much higher yield than it did in the private sector. And obviously the complainant was very much interested in that. Why the agent told the complainant not to mention it was going to be used for social housing, I don't know. I really don't know. And as you can see, once the mortgage offer was received, it explicitly excluded the use of property for social housing. And at that point, the complainant understandably got cold feet. No one really wants to be breaching the terms of their mortgage agreement. And of course, the complainant withdrew from the transaction at that point. Agent's response, as it says on the bottom there, so they were an end-to-end service and the complainant didn't use their mortgage services. So they really didn't know what conversations took place, so they couldn't possibly comment on it. So we conducted an investigation. Lo and behold, the complainant produced an email from the agent where they said that the property was currently let out privately. And importantly, that they didn't need to tell the broker or the lender of the intention to move into the social to move it to a social housing lease. As you'd expect, that was quite persuasive evidence that the agent, was there were some shortcomings. Let's put it politely like that. Obviously, the adjudicator considered the complainant didn't seek the financial services through the sourcing agent. But obviously, as part of that process, the complainant would have been asked about the intended use of the property. And that the agent had specifically advised the complainant not to tell a broker. So really, we had no reason to doubt the complainant's account. And indeed, when raising all of those concerns with the agent, they responded and offered a refund, which pretty much says, yes, they were guilty of this. So I think, this kind of goes back to a little bit of what we're saying about how properties can be marketed going forwards, especially with all this impending regulation coming through, because doing this and advising complainants, not to do things that they should be doing is not going to end well, especially in a much more of a regulated sector. It really is not. It certainly goes against ethical practice, goes against best practice standards, all of those sorts of things. And yeah, as I say, we really, really don't know why the agent went down this particular route. So that's the case study. I mean, there is another slide here which talks about, should the complainant have followed the advice? Did the agent think the complainant was unlikely to get a mortgage for social housing due to lack of experience, so on and so forth? I'll be honest with you, these are all questions that we actually don't really know the answer to. It was just quite strange, really, this particular case. I'm sure there's plenty of mortgages out there which would allow social housing tenants. So why another mortgage wasn't got, so they could actually go down that route, is beyond me. So
Mortgages for that sector are actually quite restricted, Peter, along with supported housing as well. And the reason being is that the mortgage providers consider them to be a much higher risk because of the fixed term leases. And if the mortgage ceases to be paid, they will be the bad guys for kicking vulnerable people out into the streets.
not good luck, is it?
Yeah, and I can tell you that probably my money would be on the fact that the sourcing agent knew that, and that was why they said not to say anything.
And they're marketing it as a social housing opportunity.
Yeah, there are people who specifically do social housing and supported, and there are specific lenders that will lend. They have to meet their criteria for obvious reasons, but it does restrict the number of finance providers for those two sectors, but they are doable.
That's the point. They are doable. There is mortgages out there which could do that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know why for a second the agent didn't actually go off and recommend a load of mortgages which would have been compatible with it. That would have been the solution to this particular problem, rather than burying their heads in the sand and hoping the complainant would go away.
If you said they took 50% of the fee up front, they were wanting to take the fee and then run to the hills, Peter, that was what they were planning on doing.
I want to say that, but you're probably right, Tina. You are probably.
Be that.
I know. So, we get onto the questions bit. I tell you what, if I can stop sharing, I'll get onto the website and then we can do Q&As if that's all right with everybody. Right, so let me work out how to stop sharing this.
On the share button and then click stop sharing.
Oh yeah, that's plainly obvious. It's up there, isn't it? Sorry.
Okay. If you open up on your desktop or laptop, the site in a window for sharing, and then click the share button and share it again.
Okay.
There you go. We can see it now, Peter.
Ooh, how exciting. Right, okay. So let me give you a quick tour of the website. So when you get to the website, our new fancy website, you get asked, are you a consumer, are you a business? For the purposes of this webinar, I will click I am a business. There's a little bit of lag on it. We're not quite sure why that is, but it's a little bit of lag. So I do apologise, but wait a second for things to go, things to change. So what I'm going to take you to is the different requirements we got here. Now, register your business. This is all about a form which you just go through and you start clicking stuff, and it gives you all the different steps on there. But actually, the requirements page I think is quite useful and actually something to very much tie in, I think, with certainly what you guys are doing at NAPSA. Now, we've got here, we talk about general membership obligations, which obviously you can click through to all of those things, all our various codes of practice, which will take you to that page, the deed, terms and conditions, all of those sorts of things. But it also gives advice about client money protection, identification, internal complaints procedures, all of those sorts of things. Now, obviously, we've also got complaint handling toolkits, and this takes you straight through to our complaint handling toolkits, which gives you some template letters where you fill in the gaps. It'll also give you a process you can put on your website and all of those sorts of things. So if I click on that, crossing my fingers, it takes you to the complaints handling stage. So this is a business-specific page. We've got a very similar thing for consumers. It takes you through the process, obviously all the various different steps. It tells you about your investigation, which is the thing you have to do before anything can come to us. So what should I do if I receive a complaint? Code to practice, your member obligations in there. If you've got a template, yes, we've got all these different templates depending where you are, and you'll be able to click through and use those. What do you do if you've got a verbal complaint? So on and so forth. But all the sort of questions that we regularly get from our member businesses are all in there, basically. And as I talked about earlier, goodwill offers, they're a really good thing. If you know you've done something wrong, the best advice is to hold your hands up. If you think there's goodwill offer is reasonable, then please do offer what you think is reasonable. And actually, if it does come to us and we think it's reasonable, we're gonna uphold it. It's as simple as that, really. Now, if all of that doesn't work and you have to signpost consumers to us, these are the different steps you can go through. So what happens if the consumer doesn't accept resolution, and what can you do? What should be in your final viewpoint letter? Then when it comes to us, this is what we do. We review all the evidence and we go through all those processes that I talked about earlier, that early resolution process and all of those sorts of things. And then at the end, it's all about what sort of resolution are you going to receive? How we're going to resolve it? What we base our decisions on? What happens if we decide that actually there's nothing to support in the complaint? All of those things. Will you tell me to improve my service? Maybe. If there's something that we find which actually we think you guys could do better, we will write to you and say, actually, if you change X, Y, and Z, you'll stop A, B, and C happening. So we do that quite often. And so it goes on. So all the frequently asked questions, all happily in one place, under businesses, under handling complaints. We've also got information for businesses as well, which I'll take you through. So this is general advice and guidance. So we break this down by sectors: letting, sales, leasehold management. And also we've got a section on trade bodies and service providers, of which you will see the National Association of Property Sourcing Agents listed under there, along with lots and lots of other bodies, because there are lots of other bodies in our sector there. I'm hoping at some point, Tina, we will have a property sourcing. We will say, and I'm sure we'll get to the Q&A bit and you can ask me about that. And then we've got our different policies and documents. So again, links to the code of practice, consumer guides, complaints about our service. If you didn't like what we did, you can complain about us to our independent reviewer, and all of those sorts of things you'd expect to see under there. And probably the other thing for you guys, well, actually, let me just show you the consumer page as well. So what we've done is something similar to the consumer page in terms of what they need to do. So what we're trying to do with this page is trying to manage consumers' expectations. The amount of calls we get where somebody hasn't raised the issue with the business in the first place is nobody's business. When we used to have an office, I used to regularly walk past our inquiries team, and the first question they're always asking is, have you complained to the business? And 9 times out of 10, they hadn't. So this is all about making sure that if there is a complaint about you guys, you actually get a chance to hear about it first. You actually get a chance to resolve it first. And actually, complaints are a great source of intelligence about whatever business you're running, because they're highlighting all the bits that people are seeing which they don't think is working right. Now, it may be that they are working right and they just need an explanation about it. But it might be that they spotted something wrong. And actually, that's valuable information that a lot of people will go pay for mystery shoppers to go and do and things like that. So complaints, are generally speaking, can be quite a good thing. So you've got all of these things here for a complainant. Should I pay a business's fees if I'm happy with the service? What happens if the business doesn't respond to my complaint? When should I refer my complaint to? All of those sorts of things. This is actually going to be helpful for you guys as well. If you've got one of those awkward people, you can refer them to this page. These are the steps you need to go through. Then it talks about how consumers can raise their complaint with us. What happens if they're not registered with us? How can they refer it? All of those sorts of things. And then, as you'd expect, we go through all the different stages of how we resolve a complaint, the resolution, and all of those sorts of things. So that's what the consumers see on their side. What we're planning on doing with a member portal going forwards is a lot of this stuff is going to go into the portal. So if I go back to information for businesses and what's the point, handling complaints, we've got our complaint handling toolkits in here somewhere. Okay, so if I was to click on, say, this one, we get our complaint handling toolkit up. These are the sort of things that are going to end up in the members area. But at the moment, you can see there is a process which you can use. There's some advice about handling complaints in there. Then there's template letters, which you can use there. There's acknowledgement letters you can use, so on and so forth. So there's all there in one kit. Now, these are the sort of things we're looking at in terms of a member portal. But what we're also looking at in terms of a member portal is sector-specific guidance. So we've got a bit on here in terms of information for businesses, but actually we want some really good in-depth guidance on certain issues. So if we look down, say, sales, for example, we want good in-depth guidance on material information, on simple things like viewings. If you look at lettings, deposits, all of those sorts of things. And not only are we going to be doing guidance for our members, but we're also going to be doing guidance which is TPO branded, which our members can hand to consumers to help them understand as well. Because one of the things we see, certainly on the front door, is that consumers are, generally speaking, not particularly well educated, and actually understanding things like modern method of auction, for example, is a great one. Not a lot of consumers understand the modern method of auction. They don't really know how it works. They get themselves in a bit of a pickle about it. But producing guidance on those sorts of things that our businesses can hand out to consumers means it's not advice from the agent, it's advice from the Property Ombudsman. So hopefully that carries a little bit of authority. So hopefully that will serve to educate consumers. What we're also going to do in the members portal as well is we're going to expand the case study library that we've got on here at the moment. So we've got a case study library, which is primarily for consumers. So if I was to click on this one, you can see we do a case study in about 7 or 8 paragraphs, which is great for a consumer. They can read it nice and quickly. They can get an idea of the sort of complaints and what the outcome's going to be. But for you guys, you need more detail in here. You need to know how this links to the code of practice, how this links to official guidance out there, all of those sorts of things. So the plan is to have a case study library which links to external guidance, which links to our internal guidance. So you will click on an issue and it gives you everything you need to know about that issue. So that's the plan going forwards, certainly in terms of the portal. And certainly we're thinking about potentially some sort of training, maybe even some webinars on there. So we'll see how that develops. But right at this stage, we are at the design stage of it. It's the pen and paper stage where we're working through, what is possible, what can we do, and importantly, how much is it going to cost us? Because quite frankly, as any of you know, if you're dealing with IT, the sky's the limit on what you can pay. So we're going to have to be realistic about these things. So I think that's it in terms of me talking over a load of slides and so on and so forth. I'm more than happy to do Q&As on anything that I've talked about.
Peter, a question from me.
Yes.
The easy access to searching for those who are actually members of the TPO is harder to find now. I found it, but I don't know if there's anywhere easier.
Well,
The footer at the bottom of the consumers pages.
So it is there. It's an interesting one, this is, Tina, because we've had mixed response on the Find a Member, because it was quite prominent on our previous website. But what we wanted to do, so if I go and look for a business, I just go to, say, make a complaint first. It comes up, search your business.
Okay.
So if I go and pick on, I'm going to pick on Connells. I always pick on Connells. I'm sorry, Connells. I'm going to pick on Connells. If I do that and have a search, what it will give me is all of the 152 results for all of the different Connells. So if I go and pick on the first one, what we wanted to do here was to put the make a complaint button. But actually, what we realised, a lot of people just want to search for a business. They don't actually want to make a complaint. So what we did is we made sure that this came up first, or we can indeed have a map view and see where they all are. And when you click into more information, it will then give you the more information about it and then allow you to make a complaint, which then takes you onto the forms on that. And then it will give you, give you the basic information about that particular business. So,
And I click on make a complaint, Peter.
well, the other place you can find it, and let me just think, where else do we put it? We've put it in several.
Register. It might be only in the consumer footer. Oh, no, there it is. Register of business. Sorry, it's that one. Yeah, register of business. It did take me a while to find it. It takes you to the same page as the hit and make complaint, and it does exactly the same thing.
So the idea is when we were looking at this website, the old website, I mean, dare I say, it had over 1,000 pages on it. It was frightening. We managed to condense this down to about 40 something pages, which was an absolute labour of love. And what we certainly decided on the find a member functions is that we just needed one place which everybody could kind of go to. What we've also got is a link to this. Now, you probably know about this, but other people on the call might not. Our friends in Trading Standards have got a property agent checker. So again, if I was to type in Connells here, to probably break the system, I'm just going to let's just pick Connells. Just it doesn't work, isn't it? What this does is Trading Standards has brought together our data and the property redress scheme's data and put it together in this portal, but also checked on things like client money protection and whether there's whether we're an approved redress scheme, which obviously we are because they approve us. But there's a bit more information on that. So I'm hoping if I click on this will give you the different services they provide, obviously address and all of those things. So actually, there is one place to go, Tina, when you can go and check on any agent.
That's good. I hadn't actually realised that. I never clicked on that. That's very good.
Yeah, I thought it was quite good as well. So there is actually one place to go on that. Just go back to that. Is there any other questions on the website?
Yes, I've got a question. I'm currently in the process of setting up a property sourcing business. My aim was to register with the Property Ombudsman and then go register with HMRC in the near future for anti-money laundering.
Yep.
As a part of the website or part of the registration process where it asks, do you please confirm you currently hold the following? An anti-money laundering being on there. Obviously, I don't hold this at the moment. So would I be correct in assuming I would answer that with no? Or does that imply that we need to register with HMRC before yourselves?
I think I sent that query through to the team, Peter, as well.
I think so. What we do, my understanding of what we do is we'll get you in membership, but then we will also be conducting audits to make sure you've done what you said you have actually done. We're not going to refuse you membership, but we are going to say go off and get that, and as soon as you get it, send it back to us. Send back confirmation of it. So I don't see that being a problem, Will.
Okay. Now what's the best way of contacting you for letting you know that I've then registered with HMRC following that?
So when you go through the whole process of logging in and filling out the form, you will then get the contact details of the membership team and the compliance team on that. You'll then have the contact details to be able to go back to them and give them this information.
That's great, thank you.
No problem at all. I would take you through the process, but it's quite a long form. Well, I'm sorry, it's quite a long.
The really, really good thing is, Peter, is they can tick boxes for sourcing sales and sourcing lettings on TPO, which you haven't been able to do before. And sourcing sales is for sales sourcing lettings is if you're doing rent to rent, I assume, Peter.
Absolutely. There's an element of rent to rent on that as well, Tina. Absolutely. But I think there's a separate rent to rent section. It might be. We might have gone by now. I'm not quite sure. That's a question perhaps for the Q&As. But yeah, certainly what we certainly found over the years is that we've been going for 30 years, and things evolve over time. And actually the way we did memberships, it's been a bit slow in evolving. And actually, when we were thinking about a new website, we're thinking, well, we've got all of these businesses, but what services are they providing? Because the thing is those services could change over time. So actually, we really need a really good understanding of the services that are being offered out there. So hence, when you go through that form, it's quite long, and there's a lot of tick boxes to say, I'm doing this, that, or the other, basically. And that massively helps us as well. And what that's going to help with as well is when we look forward to the member portal, it's actually we'll be able to see, right, we've got 500 businesses, 200 of those are doing sourcing work, 200 of those. So actually, this is how we can start prioritizing guidance, all the sorts of things, because we'll obviously go to the guys who, where there's the most first, probably. Unless, of course, there's some issues which are out there in the media which actually need to be addressed quite soon. But for us, it's all, it's really getting a much better understanding of our membership base and what the services are out there. And that'd be massively helpful when we come to that portal.
Peter, if you stop sharing, and then we'll all just come back on camera. Whilst everyone's thinking or getting brave to ask questions, I've got another one for you.
I'm just trying to work out, it's hidden behind that. Hey, there we go.
What I was going to ask is, we receive a lot of calls from investors who have poor dealings with some sourcing agents. And one of the major complaints that I hear is that a fee has been taken up front and then won't be refunded, or it was non-refundable. Now, for our NAPSA members, and they will know this because I drill it into the morning, noon and night, the size of the fee that you take up front on registration or reservation is really, really key, not just to secure you, but for it to appear as fair should a complaint be made. And what I always say to them is, hand on heart, could you show evidence to prove that the fee that you took that was non-refundable was warranted by the actions and the work that you carried out? But I just wondered, from a TPO perspective, would you have a figure in mind for that for an agent?
It's a really interesting question, Tina. I mean, the principle here is if you're going to take a fee, you're providing services for that. They're paying for something. So what are those services that you're giving for that money? So actually being able to set out that the fee is X amount, but what you get for X amount is this, it's just about transparency and clarity. So the person paying the money knows what they're going to get, and you're managing their expectations right from the start on this. In terms of how much it should be, I mean, I'll dodge that particular answer by saying it depends on the services you're going to provide, basically. And I think that's the reasonable thing. So we would look, if anything came to us in that respect, we obviously look at it on a case-by-case basis. But our first port of call in looking at that is, well, what were the services offered for that fee? Was it reasonable for that fee? And is it reasonable to say it's non-refundable under the circumstances of whatever contract it was, really? So yeah.
That's right, Peter. Thank you. I think that's in line basically with what I tell them to do.
Oh, good. I'm glad we're being consistent.
Everyone, are there any questions for Peter? If you're not brave enough to come on camera, by all means, just bob them into the chat. Everyone's gone very quiet this evening, Peter. Is it because you think there's some football matches on, did you say?
Yeah, apparently there's some football matches on. Just to say, if you go to Sean Hooker's webinar next week on renters' rights, Arsenal are playing Port Vale tonight. If Port Vale win, feel free to mention it to them. They love that.
Is he a Port Vale supporter or an Arsenal supporter, Peter?
More the latter, Tina.
Okie doke. Well, the chances are he won't be very happy then.
Yeah, but you'll get a good reaction out of him.
I'm not so sure I'd want to hear what he would say to me off camera, though. Oscar says, thank you very much. Very useful information. There's no questions, Peter, from what I can tell. So,
You're
thank
welcome.
you. It's been quite interesting from the TPO perspective. So I think it's interesting for our members to actually hear directly from you, your perspective, how you see things. It's also interesting that most of the complaints that you get aren't actually from sourcing agents, and none of them have been NAPSA members today.
No.
Get the report from you guys quarterly.
I know. And in a way, I mean, part of me would love to say, well, we got all of these complaints and go through, but that's not the reality of it. As I say, it's just the 3 complaints we had in last year and just 36 inquiries, really. So, I mean, I'm hoping that's a good thing. But as we all know, that there's a whole load of sourcing agents out there who perhaps aren't quite playing by the rules at this moment in time.
Yeah,
But
not registered with either you or Property Redress, so you couldn't accept a complaint anyway, Peter.
and that doesn't make me feel particularly good because, you know, we're here for a reason, and there shouldn't be any consumers out there who, you know, are falling into a sort of a black hole where they, you know, where there's no way out of it, and they other than to go legal, and that costs a lot of money. It really just costs a lot of money, and it's not good for the rest of you guys who are trying to do a good job. It just reflecting it.
Yeah, we're just trying to raise the standards, aren't we? But also help and you know, that is currently the Wild West. Thank you, as always, Peter, for your time. I know how busy you guys are and how much you've got on your plates at this moment in time. Your heads must spin.
Yeah.
It's fabulous having you on. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you to all our members for joining. And hopefully I will welcome you back on the 30th, as Peter said, for our NAPSA webinar with Sean Hooker from Property Redress, where you'll be talking about the Renters' Rights Bill and twisting it around to aid sourcing agents as well. That's it for this evening. Thank you for joining us. The recording will be available to members in due course, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye for now.